A very warm welcome to all our viewers and welcome to a new episode of Africa Today. We will bring you all the latest news and events happening all around the African continent. My name is Angie Meher and I'll be joining you for today's episode, and as usual we'll begin with some news making the headlines from the African continent, and starting with the U.S. Secretary of State, who is currently on an African tour visiting South Africa, where Antony Blinken said that Washington will not dictate which choices Africa should make, and neither should anyone else. Blinken said African nations have been treated as instruments of other nations' progress rather than the authors of their own. Washington is seeking to boost relations amid growing concern over the growing influence of Russia and China in the African continent. Blinken said the U.S. will launch a Global Fragility Act, which will make a decade-long investment in promoting more peaceful, more inclusive, more resilient societies in places where conditions are ripe for conflict. The project is set to receive $200 million in funding each year for the next decade. Washington will host the U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in December to foster new economic engagement with the continent. His talks in South Africa also included discussions of the threats of climate change. Meanwhile, Cairo has affirmed that the African continent is the most affected by climate change, calling for increased investments in clean and renewable energy and the reduction of harmful carbon emissions to face climate challenges in the countries of the continent. Now we're delighted to be joined over the telephone by our guest for this afternoon, Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, the political analyst. Dr. Raouf, a very good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon to you.
Thank you very much for joining us, Doctor. And let me ask you, how do you weigh the importance of the visit by the U.S. Secretary of State to the African continent? He's in South Africa, followed by Congo and Rwanda.
Long overdue. I mean, I think that the United States realized that they were very late coming into Africa. Africa is a young continent full of resources, very rich, not properly exploited or managed. And of course, it has been very much looked at by other superpowers. China has seen that, Russia has seen that. Their presence in Africa started years ago. They have formed a lot of joint ventures. They have established a lot of projects. They are covering a good portion of the market.
Yes.
And it was about time for the United States to give a good look to Africa and see that they are late coming in. So they are trying to catch up and enforce their relation and strengthen their economic relations with the African countries, of course.
Indeed. Now,
Yes.
you know, speaking in South Africa, Blinken said Washington is not planning to, dictate which choices Africa should make, and neither should anyone else. How do you read the timing of this statement, Doctor?
This is a political statement. But really, I mean, that's my personal opinion. I mean, he is replying to what was always known, that African states were, I'm using the same word, pawns in a chess game, and by big occupants and foreign countries. So it's about time for this to change, and African states should have their own will and their own decisions.
Yes.
So this statement comes as a sort of comforting and political statement, saying that we should not dictate what Africa should do, and we should give them the pleasure, or
Yes.
at least the possibility to make their own choices and select their own options.
Indeed. Many analysts say Washington, of course, is seeking to boost relations with African countries amid growing concern over the growing influence of Russia and China in the Black continent. How do you compare U.S. influence in Africa as that to other powerhouses like China or Russia or the European Union?
They are nothing to compare. I mean, if we look at the African continent today, we can obviously see the presence and the influence of, as you said, of Russia, of China, and of course of Europe, historically being the occupants of most of the African states. So
Yes.
The presence of the United States is coming at a late stage, but I mean, it's never too late. So they are starting. I mean, if you look at the countries, he is visiting South Africa, which is a strong economic force in Africa. Then Rwanda, again, is a growing, very fast-growing country,
Yes.
developing very, very quickly. And then he's going to visit the Congo, Democratic Republic. I think he's visiting Congo because this is a country that represents a prospect. They are full of resources, and it is a country that has not been looked at by China, Russia, very much. So again, this is a sort of semi-open market for the United States. So countries have been selected very carefully. Again, the United States want to have a share of the wealth of Africa,
Yes.
share of the market in Africa, and I think they will make a lot of concessions to do that.
Absolutely. Now, what are your expectations for the success of this U.S. Global Fragility Act, which Blinken spoke about? He said it will address a decade-long investment in promoting more peaceful, more inclusive, more resilient societies in conflict zones. How do you see this? And he said the project will receive about $200 million in funding each year for the next decade.
A very ambitious project. Again, he wants to establish a foot in Africa. So he's proposing a long-term investment, as you rightly said, $200 million a year for 10 years. So we're talking $2 billion to be poured in Africa to promote the relations between the United States and Africa. He can call it whatever he wants, but this is a nice initiative. Again, as long as it will end up boosting the African economy, then it's good. But once again, everybody is looking at his own interests, and I think that this is one way to establish a base in Africa, economic base in Africa, and start promoting the long time ignored relations with a continent as rich as Africa.
Absolutely. Doctor, now there is expected to be a U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit held in the United States in December. What do you expect to feature on the agenda of such a meeting, sir?
I think it will be a continuation of this visit. Maybe it will include more heads of states. Just to explain what is the strategy, future strategy of the United States in Africa, exchange idea about the needs and the requirements of different African countries that will attend the summit, and try and help again to promote the relations and to put a foot in Africa by the United States.
Absolutely. Now, Doctor, how would you describe, the race for investments in the African continent, especially by, superpowers? Why is Africa suddenly becoming so attractive for them?
Actually, it's not suddenly, but I mean, a lot of superpowers, as you state, have seen this. Africa is a rich continent full of natural, mineral, and human resources, either abused by occupants over the last centuries or not exploited or badly exploited. They are poor, although they are rich in resources, They don't have the financial means to develop their resources. They need aid. The big countries, industrialized, have seen that and have started some time ago, and they are doing great. It's a win-win situation. From one side, they are making a big profit and benefit, and in the same time, they are helping African countries to develop and to promote. So, I mean, this is what the United States was not seeing lately. Maybe they were giving their attention to other parts of the world, but Africa, being so rich and unexploited, is very much a place for investment for the future. And this is exactly what everybody is doing now.
Absolutely right. Dr. Raouf Ghaffar, political analyst and our guest for this afternoon. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and your insight on today's edition of Africa Today. And still with news from the African continent, moving to Kenya. Kenyans started voting for lawmakers and a new president early on Tuesday. Longtime opposition leader who is backed by the outgoing president faces the deputy president who styles himself as the outsider. We have more details in this report.
In Kenya, official figures show that large numbers of young people have not registered to vote in the country's presidential elections. Many say they are frustrated by widening inequality and an entrenched political system overseen by the same elite. President Uhuru Kenyatta is stepping down from the helm of East Africa's economic powerhouse after reaching the end of his two-term limit. The main candidates vying to replace him are far from fresh faces. William Ruto, 55, has been Kenyatta's deputy for the past 9 years, though the two men have fallen out. Raila Odinga, 77, is a veteran opposition leader who this time round has won Kenyatta's endorsement. Many outsiders are watching the elections for president, parliament and local authorities closely. Kenya is a stable nation in a volatile region, a close Western ally that hosts regional headquarters for Alphabet, Visa and other international groups. In some polling stations in the capital Nairobi, Garissa and Naivasha lines were shorter than in previous elections, although it was unclear if turnout would pick up later. Total turnout in the last election was near 80%.
And this time to Chad, where the military government and opposition groups signed a deal for talks aimed at staging elections later this year. Chad hosts more than 1 million displaced people, including 580,000 refugees from conflicts in neighboring countries, according to the UN Refugee Agency. We have more details in this story.
Chad's military government signed a pledge on Monday with more than 40 rebel groups and opposition figures ahead of planned national reconciliation talks, though the deal did not include the country's main rebel group. Under the terms of the deal in Doha, those who signed have agreed to a ceasefire ahead of the August 20 talks planned in the Chadian capital of N'Djamena. Chad's junta also agreed to not take any military or police operations against the signing groups in neighboring countries. However, the Front for Change and Concord in Chad, the main rebel group in the country, did not sign the pledge. The shadowy group, known by its French acronym FACT, is blamed for the 2021 killing of Chad's longtime president Idriss Déby, ITNO, who had ruled the country since 1990. That immediately called into question whether the deal would be enough to ensure the success of the talks as a planned 18-month transition from military rule to democracy winds down. The Qatari foreign minister expressed hope for other groups to join the march of reconciliation and peace with a view to achieving the aspirations and dreams of the Chadian people. Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani was speaking during the signing ceremony. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres condemned the Chadian parties for their efforts in the pursuit of peace. Guterres addressed the signing ceremony in a video message. The European Union praised the signed pledges as an important step for the transition and urged all parties to join it to speed up a return to constitutional order in Chad.
And for our final news item, we go to Tunisia, where Tunisian coast guards rescued more than 250 migrants who were attempting to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Italy. We have more details in this story.
Tunisia's National Guard said in a statement that maritime authorities were able to rescue 255 would-be migrants, including 170 people of various African nationalities, with the remainder Tunisians. The attempt crossings, 17 in total, took place on the night of Friday to Saturday from the east of Tunisia, according to National Guard spokesman Hossam Eddin Jebabli. The statement did not indicate whether any vessels had got into difficulty or sunk, but did note that an unspecified sum of cash was seized during the operation. In a separate statement later Sunday, the Tunisian Navy announced that 22 other would-be migrants, including 9 children and 3 women, had been rescued on Saturday. They were all Tunisian. The statement said they were rescued on a boat 80 kilometers off the island of Koryat near the eastern coastal city of Monastir. Jebabli said the National Guard on Friday had carried out a preemptive operation, arresting 5 people who were preparing to lead an illegal immigration bid departing from the coast of Susa province in the east of the country. The Tunisian Coast Guard announced in mid-July that 455 migrants had been rescued in several operations off the northern, eastern and southern coasts of the country.
With this final news item, we wrap up today's edition of Africa Today. We do hope you have enjoyed it. My name is Angie Meher. Many thanks for watching.